Fold. Raise to 30. Fold.
So this is a spot where if we're playing our regular cash game, I'll have it to it only range. Since we're playing closer to tournament ranges, I think this hand can go in many ways. Definitely going to have a very strong tilting range here, and this time I think I'll just lean towards flat call.
Call, button call.
So I think my hand against the original open was strong enough to play. I think it's a common mistake to think that our pot odds are improved here now that Michael called the button. But our odds are now being split 3 ways, so this is a much worse situation. I'm also out of position versus both of them, so I would mostly squeeze with stronger hands and just go.
Small blind, big blind, fold. Thank you. Heads up.
Okay. Out of position facing a button flat, we tend to do a little bit more checking. But this board is a little bit more favorable for us than most. Reason being is that the majority of his ace-5, ace-4 should be 3-betting pre. So he's not really going to interact with the wheel cards the way that he would if he were defending from the blinds or if this were a 3-bet pot. He will possess a fair amount of Queen X, but we block a fair amount of Queen X. So sure, we'll run into King Queen off some of the time, but it's very improbable that he'll have Ace Queen. And that just kind of reduces his strongest hands down to now being exactly 5s and 3s. Given our backdoor potential and the fact that we don't possess a spade, I think that we can start with a pretty small bet here and play turns accordingly when we improve. So with 85 in the pot, I think that we're looking at 20 here.
The bet's 20.
So he goes for a small bet, very small bet. I'm supposed to continue very wide here against this bet. For our actual hand, doesn't matter as much. We just need to continue with many hands against this pretty small bet size. So I'm just going to call and then reassess the turn.
Call.
Okay, now the board becomes two-tone, or it already was two-tone, it has 2 flush draws now. We turn middle pair, which is often going to be best. We will lose to hands like Ace-Jack. We're still losing to Queen X. Though our hand and our range will tend to improve here, we would mostly be choosing polar bets on this particular card and on this particular texture. I do think that we may have a little bit, I'm sure that there's a sprinkle of like B40 in here, but I don't really see the purpose behind it. I think we'd rather just fit a lot of those hands into checking range, allowing him to potentially bluff. And I actually see a pretty valid strategy here, check raising, given how many available bets he should have on the button. So with that said, I do think we have a pretty natural bluff catcher, and we are going to continue with the check, expecting half pot to come through here at a relatively fair frequency.
Check.
So Matt goes for the check. His range, when he checks here, well, he's gonna go for some check raises definitely. It's a very decent turn to put a check raise with a very aggressive with a wide range of hands. I can also I can use. I don't have to use a very large bet size here. I don't think I can just target all of these middle pairs that are now just easy check folding and giving up, and then I can still polarize the river now with the 2 flush draws. There's also a consideration, but I think I still want to put a small bet, I think, in general here, and then reevaluate the river. So
The bet 60.
Okay, as predicted, we do face half pot here. This is a pretty wide range. They could choose to bet this. A lot of his Queen X will fit this. A lot of his Jack X will also fit this. Should be pretty clear that he doesn't have 3s or 5s at this point. He could have a hand like Queen Jack of clubs, but actually that's not true, I blocked that. But even if he did have a hand like top 2, I still think he's pretty incentivized to lean on the bigger size with hands in that class. So we're looking mostly at his pretty strong draws and relatively strong showdown value 1-pair hands. As I said, we have a very natural bluff catcher. I think on a river 10, we get to do a lot of blocking since we will have ace king in range, and he's pretty heavily incentivized to just check back on that card. And river jack, I think we can consider both blocks and check raises. We'll see how it plays out.
Call.
This is a pretty interesting card, as I wouldn't expect very much 5x to be in his range as played on the turn. That's not really the sizing that I think that hand class wants to choose. Maybe 5x of hearts, so you could have exactly like 5-6, 5-4. Not going to be very high frequency, though, in the half pot sizing. Given that we do have the overpair advantage here, I think that blocking is completely reasonable. I'm a little bit hesitant to do so, though, after we played the previous pot against him where I blocked 3-bet jammed, because I have a hand that kind of fits that category again. I'm still pretty, yeah, because we have ace king in this block range. I just think it's overall good. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's good. I'm not exactly positive what my response is going to be yet. I may deviate depending on how he responds to this. With 240 in the pot, B10 is interesting here. Because I don't really have a queen as played. I'm kind of open to this. The alternative is that I just check call. He does still have a lot of bluffs, both of which are going to bluff, whether I check or lead. The only question is, like, does blocking serve me better for the times that he has, call it ace jack, king queen, versus me just check calling versus those hands? I do still have aces and kings as played for sure. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to go with the block because I'm unsure.
The bet's 25.
So this is a very similar spot to the hand that we played before, where he leads really small into the river. Not so used to these spots with these tiny river bets, 200 big blinds deep. So I'm just going to treat the small bet as a check, as I would normally do, and play the same strategy that I was going to play regardless. Now his range, he's definitely going to contain a few Queen X that is going to play this way. Something like Queen 10 definitely makes a lot of sense here. It also makes a lot of sense for him to have a jack. It makes sense for him to have a few 5x in his range as well. Now my range here, I'm definitely going to have the queen, king queen, maybe some ace queen. I think I should have bet bigger on the turn when he checked to me. But I took a conventional line. I went for a smaller bet. Now I think with a hand like king queen, I definitely want to go for value here and just go for a raise and bet the normal bet size that I would be betting regardless. And yeah, the idea here is to target some portions of his range. I'm always gonna get called by a queen. I might even get re-raised sometimes here, but I expect to get folds from hands like under pairs to the jack, and maybe even get some folds from a jack.
Raise 190. 190.
This probably would have been the sides that I faced if I checked anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. I'm a little bit on an island. I think the easiest way to play this would have just been to check and bluff catch at a reasonable frequency. I think having the 10 of hearts is probably a bit of a negative, which makes our hand less bluff catch worthy. What blocking does do, though, I believe, is eliminate his ability to raise ace-jack, which is kind of important because had I checked, I think ace-jack could probably go for a half pot to 3/4 pot size. So now basically we're either against a queen or we're not. I think that, you know, he still has ace-10 off in range for sure. He still has 10-9 of spades for sure that has to bluff. He'll still have king-10 off, probably pretty close to full. So yeah, the 5 or the 10 of hearts isn't great here, but as played, I really don't think he has very much 5x, which is going to be the majority of what wants to raise here. And of course, we're just going to be paying off a hand like king-queen, but I think that's probably the thinnest hand that he does this for value with. I could be wrong. Again, we created a lot of meta when we did this earlier, but I just kind of feel like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he goes a little bit too thin maybe in these spots, so I wouldn't be shocked maybe if we see king jack, ace jack, but I'll live with it.
He's got ace-10. He's got jacks. Raise to 30, fold. Oh. Good, okay, thanks. Fold. Fold. The button folds.
I think we have a pretty standard 3-bet here. We're slightly deeper, so I'm going to size to about 5x here, so I'm going to make it 150.
Re-raise from a small blind to 150. Big blind folds.
Bit of a big 3-bet from the small blind, but I guess this is kind of the standard of what we've established at the table. In any event, I don't really think my hand ever mixes in any capacity. It's just going to be a pure call. For this size, I should expect him to be a little bit less linear in his construction, especially since there is so much incentive to be pipped from the small blind in general due to the ante. But again, he could just be sizing up in a spot that doesn't call for it and have his complete range. So we'll just play accordingly.
Call. Heads up.
Okay, we're quite deep out of position here, so we're going to want to do a bunch of checking, but at the same time, we still want to get called by worse, which that is going to happen a lot on this board. The pot's about 300 now, so I'm going to bet just over a third, maybe because we're slightly deeper on a pretty dry board. I think we're still going to get value from like 8s through to jacks and stuff like that. And plus, we're not too bothered if he's got a better hand than us, because we still have a queen and we have backdoor flush draw.
The bet's 1 in a queue.
Okay, this is going to be pretty much a range bet board for Ginge, especially if he is 3-betting linearly as that construction tends to be. He'll have a lot of hands that surround the queen and the 7. We have a very clear continue, I believe. He's leading here for about third. Probably has 2 sizings on this texture. Difficult to know, but 9s is smack dab in the middle of bluff catching region. We'll have a little bit of a raise frequency on flop textures like this, but very specific hand classes. So hands that wrap the 7 and some of our queen X, our stronger queen X. This will get dicey, but there are favorable texture cards for our range on turn that will slow him down, which is why we bluff catch.
Call.
Okay, the 3 is a pretty bad one for us because it's 6-5 completes. That being said, our hand is still super strong. I don't want to bet and get raised on this texture this deep, so I think the stand is going to be to check. If he checks back, we get to do some large bets on the river, and we get to do some check raising on the turn, versus some smaller sizes as well.
Check.
All right, I was going to get a little bit dicey here had he chosen to bet the turn. I think that this is an advantageous card for our range. We have all the 5/6, he has very little. And this spot can tend to get over-bluffed by ace-5. So I think had he led, half potish, I probably would have hit him with a 2.5x raise. And then we'd have just shown down 9s some of the time. As played, we are smack dab in the middle between a check back and another side. So there is definitely a subsection of our range, sets, ace queen plus, that are very happy to go for B75 here. There's another subsection, I guess straights would fit into there as well. So where do we put the protection bets then? Well, there's not a whole lot to protect from. Ace-5 is double gutted with an over, obviously not going anywhere, and at least some of the time we'll check raise. Ace-King is the only thing we're really denying equity to. 10s and jacks aren't going to bet large on the river. They're not going to bet any larger than what we bet right now. Yeah, I don't think protection betting really exists on this particular card, so I'm just going to check back.
Check.
Okay, so the 5 completes a straight on the river. He can have ace-5 very, very occasionally, maybe like ace-5, well, he can have ace-5 backdoor flush. So I imagine he's going to bluff those a bunch on the turn, I'm not sure. 6-5 obviously bets the turn. He has some 7-6. He also has a bunch of hands now from like 8 suited jacks. I don't think he has that many stronger queen X. So the question is, do I value bet this myself? And if I do, what do I do versus raise? And if not, if I check, what do I do? Is that the right thing to do? And is he going to bluff me enough if I do check that I want to check call? I think this hand is actually super awkward here, but in general, I want to do a bunch of betting. I think once he checks back, I think I have to have best hand too much, and all the hands that I beat are going to check back himself, and he's not going to bluff them. So given the hands that I beat are going to check, then my hand is going to fall into bet, but now we have to decide what size we want to make it, and what are we going to do versus raise. And that's basically what I'm thinking about. So the pot size here is 150, 300 plus 125 is about 550. What sizing? Don't want jacks to call basically. And I'm protected here by 5x. I think I'm just going to go for a reasonably large size. So I'm going to go 375. 375.
The bet's 375.
Okay. This is an interesting sizing choice, I think. I could be wrong, but I think I have the slight range advantage on this particular river. I will have 7-6 in 2 combos. I'll have pocket 6s in full, and I'll have ace-5 in full. Probably not 4-betting it ever. Now I suppose some of those hands bet the turn, so maybe I don't have them in complete, but I would imagine his only 5x as played would be ace-5, 4-5. I don't expect him to show up with 7-6 here ever. I don't expect him to have sets, except maybe exactly pocket queens. So since the top end of his value is so very, very tight, I would expect those hands to really go closer to pot. And then I would expect his ace-queen, kings, aces, jacks, 10s, all to go more blocky. So somewhere between 10% and 40%. Him kind of fitting everything here into a 2/3 pot sizing. It puts my hand in a very weird spot. I would imagine ace-king and ace-jack are going to be the most natural bluffs. Although they're not his bottom, he's going to retain some 10-9 in this formation, some jack-10 suited. I have the 9 of clubs. I think that's probably a good thing. since his club hands probably bet the turn. Yeah, I'm very indifferent with this hand. I could be making a very egregious error here, calling down. I lose to an awful lot, and I don't beat very much. But I do expect to see some Broadway hands possessing a 10, a king, or a jack in them. So we're gonna look this one up.
Call. Who's got queens with a king? Fold. 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 Button folds. Small blind calls, the option.
This is a hand that will raise an ISO in this spot some of the time. It's getting late. I'm going to choose that time to be now.
Raise to 40.
Okay, so because we're limping so much, this hand does function into a limp 3-bet or as well as a limp call. I think we're gonna lean as a limp call because we're still pretty deep.
Small blind calls. Thank you. Check.
Okay, this is a texture that's very, very favorable for us. We have a really weird hand with the way that it interacts. But we do have backdoors both high and low, so turn 10, turn queen, turn 3, turn 4, all pretty good for us. The turn 3 or 4 is actually not particularly great, but equity-wise, it's going to be helpful for us. We're just basically, we're at the bottom of a hand that has the potential to be able to polarize, so I think that we just kind of go for it here and start with a little bit of a pot. So we made it 40 pre, 80 in there. Let's go 115.
The bet is 115.
So Berkey comes with a 110, which is a pretty good size. Our hands is very strong. So do we want to have a check raise frequency here at all is the question. 13, 14, almost 15. Okay, so we're gonna roll a check raise and kind of might just rip it on us. I think if I had a different hand, Berkey's just likely to pop off here a fair amount. It's kind of close. I think I'm gonna roll a low frequency check raise. Our range is mostly gonna play call. Okay, so I do get a check raise here. So I think our response is also kind of polar. So
Raise to 425. Folds. Fold. 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 Raise to 25 on the button. Small blind folds.
Christian opens on the button to 2.5x. At some frequency, we can consider 3-betting, but
Big blind calls. Heads up. Check.
Okay, so kind of a board that does allow for a fair amount of c-betting. I mean, her range is going to be pretty wide, but it's not a board that we probably get to bet all the time. But the deuce does allow us to bet it a ton. I think she's going to start with we do have kind of one of these like lowest ranking ace highs. So our backdoor equity is 0. We don't really dominate any other ace highs, so just like c-betting is gonna like perform pretty well. So that's what we're gonna do. So the pot is now 65.
The button bets 20. Fold. 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 Raise to 30. Button folds.
Okay, you got passive. I'm gonna play this as a call because I rolled passive. Shuffling chips is bad, don't you?
Small blind calls.
Spot in which should be playing really wide ranges, giving the price that I've been getting, and yeah, just getting that the absolute bottom of range. There's not much I can do here.
Big blind folds. Heads up.
Okay, so I've looked at a spot at around 30 effective. Cutoff versus small blind, it's a little bit different when you're 200, but this 10 is very good for my range. The 10 is very good for me. I'm gonna have Jack 10 off, Queen 10 off, King 10 off. Hands I don't want to 3-bet, but hands I definitely want to play with the ante. So this board is like deceptively pretty good for me. So I'm gonna do something fun and come with a lead 75. 25, 30, 60, 70, 80. Let's go 50.
The bet is 50.
I tend to believe Landon. Well, I know that his strategy involves a lot of leading on board textures that include 4-5 being a strong hand. I think that this is a little bit problematic. Maybe not problematic. Let's call this interesting. In a scenario where we share all the sets, he probably doesn't have 10s. I have it in full, and I have all the overpairs. There just aren't that many combinations of 4-5 suited to suddenly allow him to start leading. Versus the larger size, I think my hand is a pure fold, but I don't want to float, obviously. I have no desire whatsoever to be floating. It's really just a matter of, is there any merit to making this 175-ish? I don't imagine he has any bet folds. The range of hands that lead are largely going to be straight draws, pair plus, and maybe some overcards. Like, I guess he could include like a little bit of queen jack in there. My instinct here is to play raise with my worst hands that have the ability to improve. Like, I think we can naturally float hands like king, queen, queen jack, ace highs. I think hands like Queen 9, King 9 specifically probably want to continue in some capacity. When we have the offsuit variety like this, it's probably just a natural fold. Okay, I've talked myself into it. I'm not going to do anything stupid.
Folds. Shows a 3.
Okay.
Just like showing threes.
Is there a world where a 3 wouldn't be the best hand there?
No.
Right.
It's a good card though. It's a 3.
Fold. 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 Button fold. Small blind calls, the option.
Okay, so we know Kevin's limping his range here, but I don't think I'm going to raise this one, even though it's really bad. I'm going to stick to like raising really good ones and then having some kind of blocker to some hands he continues with that don't do too badly post flop. So I'm just going to check.
Check.
So this is going to be a texture that connects with both of us fairly well. The imposition player is going to check back a lot of connected cards that hit this flop, so I think my options are better check. I don't think I want to be using small bets on this texture. I think my hand does really well as a big bet because I have the ability to continue on a lot of future streets, and I get immediate fold equity from king high and maybe even ace high.
The bet's 20. Fold. Raise to 30. Fold. Fold. Button folds.
Again, this hand is like really close for I can call here because of the ante. I think King 8 I do call, but this one I'm going to fold.
Small blind folds.
Okay. Not necessarily a hand that's going to do much 3-betting from these positions, but always going to be defending. Going to take a, second to at least make it look like I was considering something, but definitely just going to call.
Call. Heads up.
Just going to play check here. I don't really think we have a lot of leads. She really isn't supposed to be like c-betting range on this kind of a board, so we do get to see some checkbacks, but we'll see what happens. But just gonna start with the check.
Check.
This is going to be a simple flop for our hand. Obviously, we have some backdoor potential with our pair here. Sorry. I expect Cusham to be checking to us here a lot of the time. It feels slightly wider. He might lead. However, given that he checked to us, I think we should still continue and just see bet in this hand.
The bet is 45.
Okay, so she chooses a pretty good size, in my opinion. Representative of her range. She's not going to be c-betting a pure range here. But our hand is like pretty much too weak to check raise. So we just pretty much land at the middle portion of our range. So we're not going to do much here but call. hands that I would check raise are 6-8, 8-9, things like that. And then maybe like ace jack, maybe king jack with a diamond is like the stone bottom, but these positions are pretty tight ranges, especially from her. So we can play pure call. We do get some leads on a fair amount of turns. Something like a 6 would be pretty good for us to lead. 10 would be a miracle because it'll increase her bluff frequency, but we'll start with a call.
Call.
Pretty much the nut low card on the turn, or one of them at least. Not gonna be doing much here, but check.
Check.
The offsuit ace is a pretty good card for us. I don't expect him to be peeling with too many ace X hands unless he has 2 pair at this point. Or maybe something with the ace of diamonds. However, considering we have a diamond in our hand, that subtracts some of those combos as well. So this is definitely a card where I want to barrel for a pretty large size, considering that there are a fair number of draws on that flop. So I will probably just size something between 60 to 75% pot again. And expect to potentially fire another barrel on the river if it seems like an advantageous card for us.
110. 110.
110 is a little strange. It just kind of doesn't fit the incentives of her range. Like, this is mostly like a big better check spot in my opinion. Her hand, I guess, is like ace 10, and she's like playing it for its absolute strength. Maybe she has like queens that she's like sizing down with, but I would kind of expect a different bet size, to be honest. It's kind of strange. I think we're forced to call one more. It's a little bit thin. And then we'll see. Not really loving the situation, to be honest, but maybe we need a diamond to be able to check raise. I'm not sure. The sizing is a little strange. I think we're forced to call one more. I think we're a little bit too strong of a range. So we're gonna call.
Call. Check.
Christian just elects to check really quickly on this river. The river obviously completes the flush draw, and 8-9 also gets there for the straight. He can also potentially have 2 pair type hands, like obviously Jack 10, some suited 10-7s. Obviously, our hand is such that we don't expect to be winning if we check here. We do have a diamond in our hand. Again, that makes it slightly more favorable that he wasn't on the flush draw. It's just a matter of if we do choose to bluff this hand, considering that we did bet the turn with the sizing that he did, if it's credible that we are presenting a flush here, since a lot of ace X hands are actually going to be checking this behind or making it a size that's on the smaller end, I would say. So, given the energy that Christian checked this river with, it seems that he's not very inclined to fold. But let's see if we can credibly represent something like a 2 pair type hand that's going for pretty thin value. and hope he doesn't have a hand exactly like Jack 10.
The bet is 260.
So the question is, does she value bet worse? And the answer to that is pretty much no, always. I don't think she's ever value betting ace king here. Have to be like ace king with the ace of diamond, king of diamonds. No, I don't think she's value betting worse. So is she not value betting worse? Is she bluffing? Does she have enough bluffs in this line? Queen 10 doesn't really take that size on the turn though. King 10, she's not bluffing with. There's also 10 on the board, and I have 10 in my hand, so that's unlikely. She's not value betting worse. 6-8 gets there, 8-9 gets there.
Folds, Jack 10.